About 5 years ago, Naomi Hobson approached me from LLS to get involved with this project. I was quite keen to get involved to learn a bit more about sex semen and genomics.
The project really came about on the back of the 18-19 drought because the consistent question we were getting from landholders is how do we rebuild? We've destocked heavily, we've got lower cash flow, everything's expensive, so how do we get our herd up and running again and how do we get our cash flow up and running again? And that's how we ended up with the Rapid Herd Recovery project.
We sat down and designed a project, so literally we split 200 heifers in each herd and we put 100 heifers to really high quality AI size and female semen, and we put the other 100 heifers to the normal backup size that they use within herd, and then we looked at the contemporary comparisons. What we decided to do was trial a few technologies, and one of the technologies that we looked at was sex semen. So could we actually use female semen rather than conventional semen, and could we increase the number of viable heifers that are on the ground at the time? So we explored that. At the same time, we tried to look at other technology. So what could we do with Heifer Select? So it was a new product. It's an estimate of the genomic potential of heifers, and we wanted to make sure if we were breeding heifers, could we actually select the best ones at a yearling age so we get the most out of that program, so the most genetic change with the most number of breeding females, and that was the project we designed.
So one of the technologies that this project is looking at utilising is fixed time artificial insemination, which is where we synchronise estrus of the heifers so they're all inseminated at the same time. Traditional programs would have you using heat detection where you're actually watching for signs of heat and then AI in groups of animals based on when they come on heat. So this is a less labour intensive process to utilise AI. Genomic selection is a new breeding tool that's available for commercial producers. A lot of stud producers have been using it for many years. And what it entails is taking a DNA sample from the animal, and we use that with a tissue sampling unit where you use a specialised gun and you take a sample of the tissue from the ear, it gets sent away and the animals are genomically tested. So essentially you're getting a DNA footprint for all of those animals. And within that we have markers for specific production traits, which links back to what people will be familiar with estimated breeding values. So essentially through that process we get an estimated breeding value or a suite of estimated breeding values for each animal as you would for any stud animal or a bull that you might be looking at in a stud herd.
So then we modelled it out and said, what happens if we got an average 45% conception rate? What would that do for the cost benefit of production of heifer calves? What we found is that a heifer calf on the ground using that program was $198. And then if you use a conventional program just using backup bulls and buying bulls for $15,000 on average and having them for 3 years, they're hitting the deck at about $173. So about a $29 difference between the two. So that was quite significant. But the exciting thing was, in each of the herds, we actually got at least 60% of the cohort were actually heifers. So we improved selection intensity, we got a lot more heifers to select from. They were higher genetic merit than all of the conventional heifers that were bred because they are from the top 4 or 5 bulls across Australia. And more excitingly, each of the breeders actually sat down and said, these heifers are really good, and they actually performed really, really well.
The benefits of the project was certainly learning a lot more about using sex semen as opposed to conventional semen. Alex Bohr was a very interesting contact. He's given me a lot of insights and thought processes. Learning about genomics, we have noticed in the short period we've been doing it that our average heifer score has increased.
So there was a lot of really interesting key findings that came out of this project, particularly around heifer management, particularly around semen management, particularly about working with your AI practitioners, understanding what you need to do with your heifers prior to the program, and more importantly, what do you do with your heifers after the program has been in place, and making sure they grow right the way through to calving. And that was the other big part that came out of this program, was that calving ease, a lot of these producers, they were used to having significant rates of dystocia, up to 10%. With the sex semen, we only had one female calf that was actually had to be pulled with dystocia. So over 800 calves, there was only one calf that actually had to be pulled. So that was fantastic. So we really knew that we were on a winner. And then the other big learning, which was probably the most interesting and probably the most surprising, was that a heifer that reared a heifer calf was able to get back into calf in either a first or a second cycle. So there was a lot more propensity for heifers that reared heifer calves to go back into calf as a third-year-old cow. And that's really important for these breeders, particularly coming out of drought. You just want to make sure every heifer ticks the box. So that was really key.
And an unexpected outcome so early in the piece was having so many females to choose from. and they're so even in type as now selecting which ones to keep for joining could be difficult. To help me choose which heifers to use this year, I feel I will use heifer select or genomics. I feel I only need to because if you just look at the heifers, they all look quite even. So maybe having another selection criteria could help in doing the heifer select on all the heifers.
So one of the challenges with using sex semen was bringing on board high quality information and high quality semen. What was the cost going to be? So we actually did the costing, and one of the things that we learned out of sex semen is we actually didn't get as higher rates of conception as we would do with normal conventional semen, so they're about 5 to 10% less. So in that 2024 to 25 year, we actually had a range from 30% up to 50%. So that was quite significant.
Management factors that influence conception rates with AIing, we have found a few issues with clover being a big issue because the estrogen levels in a lot of clovers, so we've been using Norvamin, and we probably actually go forward, we'll use it every single year anyway. Other factors like weather events around AIing can cause dramas. We had one year here where we only had 10 mils overnight, but all the cattle were covered in mud. We couldn't see their ear tags, we couldn't see their stickers on their backs. They were pretty sad in the morning, their ears are droopy, and it was a sign of what's going to happen. We got 1% from that, so it shows that weather can really affect stuff a lot.
The take-home messages that came out of this project are really important. The first thing is, if you're going into a fixed-time AI program and you want to do with sex semen, you really have to understand which of the bulls you want to use, and there's a lot of bulls that are now available across a range of different breeds. You've got to talk to your AI practitioner well in advance, so making sure you have your heifers in good growing condition before they go, so that 350 to 400 kilos is ideal. Making sure that you have fantastic facilities, so if you're doing an AI program, good crushers, good yards, work health and safety, so making sure that operators are doing a really good job. Attention to detail, just follow the script really, really well. Make sure you've got your good hygiene, make sure you follow exactly the timing of the AI programs. And that came out in the 25 year where we actually had better success rates when we actually knew what we were doing with the sex semen, so that was probably exciting. The next take-home message that came out of this project was the heifer select. So if you're buying in heifers, you're coming out of the drought, heifers are getting expensive, make sure you're buying the right one. So if you're buying in heifers, heifer select them, spend the $45 on getting really good genomic information, and that allows you to do a more important thing, it allows you to match the semen up to the heifers as well. We were able to generate a 25% improvement in the rate of genetic gain just by selecting the right bulls and matching those to the heifers. We're able to get a fantastic conception rate just by that second round, that attention to detail.
I'd recommend any beef producer to take on one of these programs, just as long as you need to be committed to the program and make sure your staff's on board and everyone's on the same page with what's involved. It's a pretty busy period. If you look after all those 1%ers and all those important factors, hopefully you'll reap the rewards, but just need to be pretty serious about it.
The more important thing is, if you want to make sure that you're at the top end of beef production, these are technologies for you. If you're happy with your herd where it is at the moment, then it does come with a bit of cost and it does come with a bit of time. But if you really want to be changing a herd and maximising every opportunity coming out of the drought, this is the technology you should be using. So the Southern Queensland, Northern New South Wales Drought Hub were looking for projects. They came on board, and then we started the really nice task of trying to find 4 collaborators who could look at designing a project with us, and that was really important. So we were really lucky. We had 4 really good Angus herds. So we had Tom, that you've already seen in this video. We had Fraser James from Ebor, we had Richard Puddingcombe from Paraway, and we had Jason Julie Waters from just out here of Armidale at Burralong. So they were all really good Angus herds, and we were trying to work out what we could do with that. Luckily enough, we also had really good contacts with ST Genetics and AgriGene and other players to come on board, and we had some really good support from Bovine Breeders and from Apex Breeding.
The process of undertaking this project and the results we've had have been really positive, because the project was born out of very real questions from landholders trying to recover from the previous drought. And now, as we're heading into another dry period, it gives us more information that we can help provide to landholders, both on how to manage through these conditions and come out stronger at the back end as well.